The Loser's Arcana. The year was 1963. Los Angeles, a city of dreams and deceptions. The sun, like a squeezed orange, slowly slid into the Pacific Ocean, staining the sky in candy-colored poisonous hues. Neon crosses flickered to life on the boulevards, advertising new Hollywood delights, but in the quiet, respectable lanes of Pacific Heights. Deep blue shadows were already falling. The air was sweet and heavy, smelling of jasmine and distant smoke, perhaps from barbecues, or perhaps from something else. It was here, in one of these two-story townhouses of beige stone, with its impeccably trimmed hedge and dark green door, that the Morgans lived. Their home was their fortress, their private paradise. The living room, furnished with sleek, modernist pieces with curved legs and smooth surfaces, always smelled of wood polish and fresh chrysanthemums. On a lacquered console table stood a Hoffman. Stereo, Richard's pride, with a neat stack of jazz records beside it. Miles Davis, John Coltrane. An idol bought on installment and earned through years of hard work. Evelyn Morgan approached her door at 8:30 in the evening. She felt a pleasant tiredness in her legs. 28 years old, tall at nearly 5 feet 9 inches. She moved with an innate grace that made men turn their heads. Her figure, clad in a severe gray sheath dress, was slender and supple like a model's. Her dark hair, swept up in an elaborate bob style, revealed a long, elegant neck. Her face, with high cheekbones and large eyes the color of seawater usually, expressed the calm confidence of a junior editor at a prestigious publishing house, a person used to dealing with words and meanings. But today, those eyes showed fatigue. Proofreading an endless novel about unhappy love had drained her. She inserted the key into the lock, struck by a strange thought. Richard hadn't left the hall light on for her. This wasn't like him. He, a predictable and caring man to his core, always turned on the lamp by the entrance if he was working late. "Rick?" Her voice sounded hollow in the encroaching silence. Only silence answered her, thick and ringing. The air in the house was still and stifling. The stereo, which usually blared complex improvisations at this time, was silent. This was the first swallow of trouble. She walked into the living room, dropped her briefcase on the sofa. Then her gaze fell on the half-open study door. Richard was sitting in his favorite leather armchair by the window, his back to her. His head was bowed on his chest, as if he had fallen asleep over the evening paper. "Fell asleep at work again, my workaholic?" She whispered with a slight smile, moving closer, but the smile froze on her lips. On the desk, next to scattered blueprints and formulas, stood a low cognac glass. It was almost full. This was the second oddity. Richard didn't drink strong alcohol alone, and the glass wasn't his. The crystal was too ornate, foreign. "Richard?" She called again, and a note of anxiety broke through for the first time. She walked around the chair and looked at his face. His features, usually animated by thought, were now marble still. The lips that so often formed a kind, slightly shy smile were tightly compressed. The thick lenses of his glasses hid his eyes, but Evelyn knew they would not see her. She touched his cheek. The skin was cold and smooth like polished stone. No pulse, no breath. The world turned upside down. The room swayed and spun. Something inside her screamed loudly and hysterically, but outwardly she only staggered, grabbing the edge of the heavy oak desk. Her fingers dug into the wood until the knuckles turned white. Images of their life flashed before her eyes. Breakfast in the kitchen, his warm, hearty laugh, walks on the beach in Malibu, his hand firmly on her waist. All of it was erased, severed. All that remained was this freezing emptiness and the waxen face in the chair. But Evelyn was not the kind of woman who faints. Grief, sharp as a knife, pierced her, then receded, giving way to another, more ancient and predatory feeling, rage. A cold, calculating rage. This was not a suicide. She knew it with every fiber of her being. Her Rick, her 35-year-old genius chemist, lead researcher at Cybern Pharma, a man immersed in his formulas and dreaming of ridding the world of pain, could not simply give up. He was short but sturdy, with a stubborn chin and the forehead of a thinker. An idealist to his fingertips. She forced herself to breathe evenly. Her editor's mind, accustomed to finding inconsistencies in texts, switched on at full power. She examined the glass. 1. No traces of her lipstick. And Richard didn't wear any. In the dark, green glass ashtray lay a single cigarette butt. Richard smoked a pipe. Aromatic early morning. This butt was from a filterless cigarette, with dark, almost black tobacco. Carefully, using the edge of her handkerchief, she picked it up and hid it in a gold cigarette case lying on the table, a gift from some supplier. Then her gaze fell on the desk. Among a pile of papers with chemical formulas like encrypted messages lay a clean sheet of Cybern Pharma letterhead, and on it hurried angular lines, scrawled by an unfamiliar hand. Sorry, couldn't handle the pressure. The money wasn't worth it? Evelyn's heart tightened. A forgery. A crude, clumsy, insulting forgery. Richard never wrote, "Sorry." He said, "My apologies." And he would never have written, "The money wasn't worth it." For him, money was always secondary. She allowed herself only one weakness. She leaned down and pressed her lips to his cold forehead. "I will find him, my dear. I promise you." The police arrived quickly. 2 detectives in wrinkled trench coats smelling of sweat and cheap coffee. The senior one, Detective Miller, with the face of a tired bulldog, took one look at her and felt a strange mix of pity and suspicion. Cold one? He probably thought. Her story was clear dry. She showed them the note. They examined the glass, the body, and shrugged. "Looks like an open and shut case." "Mrs. Morgan," Miller said, lighting a cigarette. "Scientists, pressure, trade secrets. It happens. They can't handle the competition." "He didn't kill himself," Evelyn said quietly but firmly. "He was murdered." Miller sighed. "And what proof do you have?" "The note? The glass? Everything points to suicide. We can't waste resources on conjectures." They left, leaving her alone, with her husband's corpse and the official verdict of suicide. The case was closed before it even began. But for Evelyn, everything was just beginning. The next few weeks became a vague, nightmarish time for her. The funeral passed in a haze. She accepted condolences, nodded, smiled stiffly and meaninglessly. And at night, when the house plunged into a tomb-like silence, she would go down to the study and begin her work. She turned into a shadow, a ghost haunting the ghost of the murderer. She started small, by questioning the neighbors. Old Mrs. Higgins from across the street, who sat by her window all day, remembered seeing a dark blue Cadillac near their house that day. "A real beauty, shiny," she said. Evelyn knew Richard's colleagues drove modest cars. A Cadillac stood out. She went to Cybern Pharma. She was met by Victor Grant, the company's head of security, a man in his early 40s, tall, around 6'2", with powerful shoulders that filled the doorway. His face, etched with a network of wrinkles, seemed carved from granite, but his gray eyes could radiate warmth, and his charming smile seemed sincere. He was dressed in an impeccably tailored dark wool suit. He smelled of expensive cologne and power. "Mrs. Morgan, this is a terrible loss," he said, his voice a low, velvety baritone that inspired trust. He led her to his office, offered coffee. Richard was a star. His work on the new analgesic, it could have revolutionized pharmaceuticals. "And what was this project?" Evelyn asked, taking a sip of the bitter liquid. "Hard to explain to a layperson," Grant said with a soft smile. "But let's say it was a formula of incredible effectiveness. Perhaps the stress, the responsibility. He was very scrupulous, your husband, afraid of the slightest mistake." Evelyn listened, nodded, all the while absorbing every detail. She noticed how his gaze, for a split second, slid toward a massive safe in the corner of the office. And she caught the same sharp, woody, spicy scent of cologne that had lingered in her living room on that fateful evening. It wasn't proof, but it was the first whiff of a lie. She started calling her husband's colleagues, arranging meetings under the pretext of sorting through his work archives. She was as cautious as a snake. From one of the lab assistants, a young and naive guy, she learned that Richard's project was not a simple analgesic at all. It was a formula for a powerful psychotropic drug capable of vastly increasing soldiers' combat effectiveness. The military was after it, and huge money was involved. Another scientist, elderly and tired, let slip that Victor Grant, a former cop with dubious connections, often solved problems for the company, and that he had repeatedly suggested Richard speed up the process, which Richard sharply refused. Evelyn immersed herself in her husband's home records. She spent nights poring over his notebooks, deciphering his handwriting, delving into formulas that were Chinese to her. She was looking for any lead, any hint, and she found it. In an old diary from 6 months before his death, Richard had briefly written, "VG insisting again on early report for interested parties. Dangerous, refused. VG Victor Grant." But it wasn't enough. She needed irrefutable proof. She remembered the cigarette butt. Finding the address of a private detective agency in the phone book, she gave them that very butt, sealed in the cigarette case for analysis. A week later, the answer came. It was a rare, expensive brand of Turkish tobacco, supplied on special order to a single tobacconist in Beverly Hills. The primary buyer was Mr. Victor Grant. The evidence was converging on one point: motive, money. means poison from Richard's lab, opportunity his position, and a witness that very cigarette butt. Now she needed a confession. She set it up like something out of a cheap detective novel. She called his direct line and said in a calm, almost indifferent voice, "Mr. Grant, I found an envelope among Richard's things. It says, to be opened in the event of my death. It's addressed to you. I think we should meet." They agreed to meet at an empty parking lot by the old pier in San Pedro. The place was deserted, lit only by dim lamps casting long, dancing shadows. A salty, cold wind blew from the ocean, tearing foam from the waves and carrying with it the cries of lonely seagulls. Evelyn stood, wrapped in a light coat, her face a pale smudge in the gloom. Grant's blue Cadillac rolled up silently. He got out of the car, still as imposing and self-assured as ever. "Well, Mrs. Morgan, where is this envelope?" His smile was disarming. Evelyn slowly pulled the transparent bag with the cigarette butt from her coat pocket. "Here's my envelope, Victor. You were careless, just like with the note. Richard never called me darling in notes, only Evie." Grant's face changed. The charming mask slipped away, revealing the cold, predatory essence beneath. His eyes became narrow slits. "Stupid, stupid woman," he hissed. "You should have let it be. You could have gotten a good insurance payout and lived the high life, Fred." "Why?" Her voice was level, but steel rang in it. "Why did you kill him?" Grant laughed, and his laughter was like metal grinding on glass. "He was a weakling, an idealist in a world of wolves. He turned down a deal that would have netted us $500,000 each. He muttered something about ethics and consequences. I made him an offer, and he threatened to go to the board of directors. Would have painted me as a dirty spy. He left me no choice." Grant took a step forward, his figure seeming enormous in the darkness. I slipped something from his own lab into his cognac. A fast, tasteless poison. Poetic justice, don't you think? Evelyn listened, and each of his words drove a new nail into her heart. For money, for this filth, for power. He had taken from her the light, the laughter, the future. And what now? Grant challenged, spreading his arms. "Going to run to your cop friends? You have no proof. Just the word of a crazy widow against the word of a respected Cyburn Pharma employee." "I'm not going to the police, Victor," Evelyn said quietly. She slowly drew a small, elegant pistol from her pocket, a Browning, 1906 that Richard had bought for her after an unpleasant incident with an admirer. It had been in her purse all these weeks, heavy and cold, reminding her that justice sometimes had to be delivered by one's own hand. Grant's eyes widened in surprise, then in animal fear. "Evelyn, listen. We can work this out. The money, I can give you twice as much." The shot sounded quiet, muffled by the roar of the ocean. The bullet hit squarely in the heart, as if guided by Richard's own hand. Victor Grant collapsed onto the asphalt, damp with sea spray, his face frozen in a mask of absolute incomprehension. Evelyn walked over to him. She felt no fear, no disgust, only an icy, all-consuming calm. She looked at his lifeless body, this empty vessel once filled with greed and lies. "Here's your Arcana, loser," she whispered. "Payment in full." She unclenched her fingers, and the bloodied cigarette butt, the key piece of evidence, fell onto his chest like a burial coin. Then she turned and walked away without looking back. Her silhouette dissolved into the night, absorbed into the salty air. The truth had not triumphed in a court of law. The law had proven blind and foolish. But vengeance, black and merciless, had been served. And in this city of illusions, where the sun only illuminated the facades and real life flowed in the shadows, it was the only genuine currency she could offer for her husband's soul.